All right, let's just jump right into this explainer because we're tackling what honestly might be the ultimate cosmic mystery. Have you ever stopped to wonder why mathematics, a system of pure abstract thought that literally just originated in the human mind, so flawlessly describes our physical universe? It is a question that has baffled scientists for centuries, but today we're going to break down a fascinating new theory by researcher Chung-Kai Chen called the dual logarithmic spectra framework. And you know what? It might just hold the answer. This profound question really zeroes in on what the famous physicist Eugene Wigner once called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. I mean, think about it for a second. Abstract constants like pi, e, and phi, we didn't discover those by measuring the physical world. They were derived through pure logic. Yet, they constantly and inexplicably show up in our physical laws, governing everything from the orbits of planets to the quantum spin of electrons. Why on earth does the universe obey the rules of human math? So, to break this down, here is our roadmap for today. 1. The great science mystery. 2. The mathematical phi spectrum. 3. The physical ternary spectrum. 4. The resonance of 10. And finally, 5. Bridges of physical laws. Okay, starting with part 1, the great science mystery. Wigner's unreasonable effectiveness. So, the key to unlocking this whole thing is the dual logarithmic spectra framework. It suggests that math and physics aren't just these completely separate realms that coincidentally happen to align. No, the theory actually proposes that they are distinct projections of a shared logarithmic foundation. Essentially, it's like they're two branches growing from the exact same mathematical tree, powered by two distinct but highly related exponential scaling generators. Let's move on to part 2, the mathematical phi spectrum, the architecture of numbers. When we look at the mathematical domain, we find the phi spectrum. This is a logarithmic exponential scaling system that uses the square root of phi, the famous golden ratio, as its fundamental generator. And here's where it gets wild. When you plug integers into this equation, it produces values that perfectly match over 100 known mathematical constants with accuracies mostly above 98%. It is literally the underlying engine of mathematical constants. And this phi spectrum is actually the hidden architect behind all those continuous, recursive geometric structures that make up pure mathematical abstraction. Whenever you're looking at continuous proportional relationships, self-similar scaling, or those endlessly beautiful fractals, you are watching the phi spectrum do its thing. It is smooth, continuous, and infinitely divisible. Which brings us to part 3, the physical ternary spectrum, the building blocks of matter. Now, if we contrast that smooth math domain with the physical domain, a totally fascinating contrast emerges. Math, driven by phi, is continuous and geometric, right? But the physical domain is a completely different beast. It is driven by the square root of 3. And instead of being continuous, it's discrete, it's chunky. It deals in quanta, specifically dictating things like particle mass hierarchies. It's the step-by-step ladder of our physical reality. And in this physical realm, we rely on the ternary spectrum, driven by that square root of 3. Just like the math formula generated pure constants, this physical formula astonishingly generates values that match the masses of all 15 standard model elementary particles. I mean, wow. The actual building blocks of matter itself are scaling right out of this single elegant logarithmic equation. All right, part 4, the resonance of 10, the cosmic plot twist. Now, earlier, you might have caught that both of those systems rely on a scaling factor of 10, specifically 10 to the power of a, to actually line up with observed reality. And honestly, at first glance, you'd be totally forgiven for thinking 10 is just some random independent number awkwardly jammed in there to make the math work out. But trust me, 10 is absolutely not a random parameter. This is where the synchronization equation comes in, and it is mind-blowing. If you take our physical generator, the square root of 3, square it, and then multiply it by our mathematical generator, the square root of phi raised to the 5th power, you get roughly 9.99, which is essentially 10. So decimal scaling naturally emerges as an exact mathematical synchronization point between our two generators. They interact to create the base 10 structure that ties both worlds together. This gives us a completely new lens for viewing the universe. We all know traditional digital binary, right? Adding zeros and ones in a linear space to build computer code. But this framework argues that nature actually uses a logarithmic binary space. Instead of zeros and ones, the foundational blocks are the square root of 3 and the square root of phi. All of complex reality is constructed through the repeated logarithmic addition of those two specific blocks. Finally, part 5. Bridges of physical laws connecting the domains. So how do these realms actually talk to each other? Well, the framework proposes a 2+1 organizational pattern. We have our two generators forming the fundamental pair, but they are bridged by a +1 component, which is physical laws, things like gravity or electromagnetism. These laws act as unchanging invariant relations. They are the consistent bridges mapping the mathematical domain and the physical domain together. And that brings us full circle right back to Eugene Wigner's big mystery. Why does mathematics work so perfectly in physics? Because they literally share the exact same logarithmic spectral organization. They only differ in their fundamental scaling bases, 5 for math, 3 for physics. The physical laws just act as the consistent mapping between them. Math isn't describing physics by some miraculous coincidence. They are born from the exact same underlying structural blueprint. Whether it's power laws, fractals, or the mass of an electron, it is all scaling from this one unified foundation. To wrap things up, I want to leave you with this brilliant thought from Chung-Hai Chen. Physical reality and mathematical structure may be viewed as dual aspects of a unified logarithmic framework. As we've explored today, the universe is likely far more elegant than we ever gave it credit for. It really makes you wonder, are math and physics simply two sides of the exact same cosmic coin, just waiting for us to uncover even deeper generators? Keep questioning that underlying math, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.